Hi, welcome to Traumatic Tomes. As you can see from the title of this video, we're going to be talking about my top 10 reads of 2024. Now, I have only chosen to include nonfiction in this list. I read novels this year. I liked some of them, but I am not including them. Tough toast. Anyways, this is a list of 10 varying nonfiction works. They're not ordered in any way. It's not 10 to 1 or 1 to 10. They're all equal, except for some of them. So I'll begin. Book number 1, Why We Drive by Matthew Crawford, Toward a Philosophy of the Open Road. So Matthew B. Crawford is a contemporary political philosopher. He's also a motorcycle mechanic, and he is big in writing about manual competence, or the value of having practical skills. This book especially delves into driving, cars and motorcycles mostly, and what it means for us as humans and how we interact with the world and these machines that we drive, what it means to fix the things that you use, how various laws and customs affect us in terms of driving. As somebody who drives a car, I thought this was a really eye-opening read into actually thinking about what we're doing, what the freedom of driving offers us, and how we get places. So I recommend Matthew Crawford in general, but I think this is his best work, Why We Drive. Book number 2, I regretfully do not have a dust jacket, but it is Enemy of All Mankind by Steven Johnson. This is a pirate nonfiction work based on the life of Henry Avery, who was a late 17th century pirate who preceded the golden age of piracy by around 30 years. I believe Avery was active in the early 1690s. And Avery is notable for one of the biggest heists known to mankind at the time, when he raided, I think it was 2 Mughal Empire treasure ships loaded with booty and things, lots of stuff. And Henry took the stuff, and the Mughals were pissed, and they told the East India Company, said, hey, we're not going to trade anymore unless you get this guy. So this whole thing with Britain turned into an international manhunt for Henry Avery and his men, and it makes for a really exciting read, especially for nonfiction. This was a fun book. Plus, it includes piracy, and there's a compelling thesis involving the history of the international manhunt and how it applies today still, as in the case of Osama bin Laden. So I really recommend this book for piracy fans in general, or anyone just wanting to read a fun nonfiction book. Enemy of All Mankind. Book number 3 is Rhymes Rooms by Brad Leithauser. Now, the subtitle is The Architecture of Poetry. This is a book about the inner workings of poetry, getting down into the nitty-gritty. I think this book greatly expanded my knowledge of poetry, and it really arose in me a vigor to read more poetry. And I think that was Lighthouser's goal, is to say, hey, like, yeah, you see these words on the page, but why is it important? Why does it matter? And it does matter. I think poetry matters, and it's underappreciated today. So good on Brad for making this book. It came out in the last year, I think. Rhymes Rooms. Book number 4, Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber. This is a commentary on modern labor and the information age, and how even with all these technological advancements, we still have a 40-hour work week, and jobs are still being done at minimal levels. Now, that's not to say all jobs are worthless, but Graeber identifies some subsets of the modern workforce, not just in public sector, also in private sector, that are either redundant or silly or worthless, and what that means for society and the people that do these jobs. Now, I haven't read much about labor, so I found this to be a exciting topic to read about. I don't think my job is bullshit, but I can see some of the aspects that he talked about kind of bleeding through into what I do, and we're all in this kind of rat race right now. Anyways, bullshit jobs. Book number 5, Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. I talked about this a few days ago in my last video, so watch that if you want to know more. I won't speak further. Book number 6, The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass by Frederick Douglass. Now, this is an amazing but haunting read. Frederick Douglass was a slave. He went through a lot of terrible things, obviously. But he escaped, and he became quite an accomplished writer, an abolitionist, one of the great men of the 19th century. Now, I always recommend that people read the literature of suffering, especially the slave age and the Holocaust. I think it's important to know that how low humanity can go, but also how resilient humanity can be. I think the most frightening part of this book is that Frederick Douglass was actually well treated compared to most slaves. He was enslaved in Maryland, which is one of the more northerly slave states. So you know that slaves in the deeper South had it a lot rougher than Douglass, yet Douglass still went through so many awful trials and tribulations that even his account is so tough to get through. So, Literature of Suffering, Frederick Douglass, great man, adept writer. I recommend every American read this. Next book, How to Take Smart Notes by Shonka Arens. I may not have pronounced that right. This is a book about note-taking, how to take better notes. Arens proposes that we all use the Zettelkasten system, which was popularized by Niklas Luhmann in the 20th century. Now, the Zettelkasten note-taking system is a bottom-up approach to note-taking, where you basically read about what you're interested in and you selectively take notes based on things you'd like to write about, and you add them into your Zettelkasten, which literally means slip box. Lumen had a box. Many people that use Zettelkasten now use web applications like Obsidian or others. But the important thing about these notes is that they are short, they are self-contained, and they are categorized or connected to other notes, and they build off of other notes that you have created. So in essence, the more and more notes that you put into this box, the more topics you have to write about as your webs grow. You figure out what you've been reading about and what might be useful topics to write about. There's no top-down part of this where you pick out a topic to write about, then you research it, and then you blob something onto the paper. This is your second brain, I believe it's called, where you have all your notes stored and with instantaneous access. So this is such a neat concept. It's a little hard to visualize or to put into practice, but I think it's worth exploring for those that would like to upgrade their note-taking. Book number 8, A Rule Book for Arguments by Anthony Weston. This is a short book. It basically tells you what an argument is, how to reason through an argument, and what are fallacies to avoid in argumentation. Now, logic in argumentation is one of the most important things you can know nowadays, especially in our age of vitriol against each other and radical discourse. You should know how to put a good argument together. And this is not a book to just read and then you're done with it. It's a handbook to be referenced. If you're like, oh, I don't know what deductive reasoning is, or I forget, you can go flip to it really quick. He's got a bunch of rules. Really useful book to have on your shelf or at the ready. A rule book for arguments. The penultimate book, Super Communicators by Charles Duhigg. This came out recently, last year or two, and it is about conversation and communication and how there's 3 main types of communication or conversation that we would do well to recognize and to adjust based on the scenario. So Duhigg says there's logical conversations, emotional conversations, and social conversations. And we should recognize which one we're in so that we can adequately move the conversation forward or help the other person get what they need. Say if somebody comes to you and they are looking for emotional support, but then you offer them logical advice instead of providing an emotional sounding board or something, you're gonna get all twisted. So this was I don't know if it's unique, but I had never thought about it like this, like types of conversation and how to approach different conversations before you even get into them. It's something useful to think about. So I think this was a worthy topic of scholarship. Super Communicators. The 10th book on my list is The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. Pollan goes through 4 different types of meals, and how they get from animal or plant to the plate. Now, this is important for all of us, especially in America where the book was written, because we all eat food. But how do you eat your food? Where does it come from? Is it industrial, organic? Have you hunted and gathered your entire meal? Who knows? I found the first part of the book to be the most interesting and the most frightening, where Pollen goes through the history of corn and how it turned into a super crop in America and how it's in most of the ingredients that we eat today. Well, corn and soy. But this is a disturbing read in regards to industrial agriculture and organic agriculture to a degree, especially when it hits the supply chain in terms of like Whole Foods type stores. It really got me thinking about how I use my wallet to vote for certain avenues of production, being local or industrial or such. And I don't know, it seems hard to escape the corn. It's in everything. So I really recommend this if you're interested in your nutrition or where your food comes from or the opacity of the industrial food business as a whole. It's disturbing. Yeah, Omnivore's Dilemma. So, thanks for watching. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. See you in the next year.